All right, everybody. So we're recording. This is period four's meeting on Tuesday, September 8th. And this is our beginning of week 4. It's kind of amazing, but we're almost a month into this madness. And I just want to remind everyone, I think everyone who's online with us now has all of this done, but just in case, and if you're watching this in a recording, at this point in the course, you should have a blog where you can document everything that you do. You should have a notebook, a physical hard copy, old-fashioned, filled with paper notebook where you can write your daily journal entries and any notes that you want to keep, and a routine. The routine's essential because the routine is that thing that tells you, oh yeah, I've got to either follow the course blog or I've got to make sure that I'm checking the course blog every day so that I can get the journal entries even though we only meet once a week. And then I also need to make sure that I know what's expected so that I post or I write or I create videos, whatever it is that we're doing together. And then I go to my Google Sheet for my period and say, did it. And really, that's it. You know, at this point, if you have that routine down and you've got your blog and your journal, everything gets easier from here. So as I begin, I want to start with the weekend. Oh, and by the way, you know, when you look at a journal topic like today's, I like to have fun with the journals. So sometimes that'll be imaginative. Sometimes it will have to do with what we're reading or discussing in the course. Sometimes it's going to be goofy hypotheticals like this because I like to get people thinking and having fun. And as always, if you prefer, you can choose your own topic. So with all that being said, let's do this. If you didn't see this, I want to make sure you know that I wrote an essay this weekend also. And I want to read this opening paragraph just because if you weren't in our Zoom meeting last week, I told everyone that I would do the work along with you. I think it's important for a teacher to model, you know, that old saying, those who can't do, teach. It's a horrible saying, but sometimes it's true. And I want to make sure that you know, not only can I do the work that I ask us to do together, but also I'm just a human being also. And I'd like to ask you for your feedback because that will do two things. Number one, it will give you something to read as well as write. And the better way to get to be a better writer is by practicing writing. But second best is by reading writing. Some of what you read when I write is going to give you a model or make you think about a topic differently, or even give you something as a strategy that you want to imitate. Sometimes you'll look at it and go, that was terrible. What was he thinking? That's okay too, because I get your feedback and I get to get better also. So what I asked here was, what did you think was effective about it? What did you think was confusing or could be improved? I mean, even my wife said that I should end it a few paragraphs earlier, so that was good feedback. Was my main idea clear? Did I answer the prompt? These are the same kinds of things that I'll be asking when I read your essays. Now, I'm not big on grades. I don't think that's the best way to evaluate anything. If I call a paper a B-, I don't even know what that means. But the feedback, the comments on content, diction, syntax, strategy, those things are really important. And if you feel like giving it a grade, fair is fair, go ahead. So back to the agenda. Oh, and by the way, you'll notice when you look at this, it is not 5 paragraphs. I can't stand 5-paragraph essays. I told you that last week. It's not huge. Oh my God, I got an A+ from somebody. Okay, I'm gonna read those later. But for right now, what I'm going to ask you after you make sure that you're caught up on any outstanding work is that you please go to that post and make a comment so that I know what you thought. And like I said, I'm not looking for compliments. If you feel like it was worth a compliment, well, thank you. But if you see something worth commenting on or critiquing, great, because that's the practice I want to get into for all of us. The next thing I have up on mind is a video I created on symbolism. And here I'm going to give us a choice. If you click on this link, it will take you right to the video. The video itself is not long. It's, let's see, I think it's about almost 9 minutes long. So the choice I want to give us is, would you like to watch that together and be able to discuss it? Or would you like to save it and watch it on your own, knowing that I'm going to be asking you to answer these 5 questions in a post on your blog? Does anyone have a preference one way or the other?
Can we watch it with you?
Sure.
It's better
Okay.
to match it together.
Okay, great. That's why I'm asking. Um, so, Carlos, I'm glad you made it. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and play this. Is it big enough on your screen now, or should I make it full screen? Do you want to see the questions, or should I make it bigger? Does anybody need it bigger? Okay, in that case, here we go. Hi, I'm David Preston, and you're watching part one of Meanings, Signs, and Symbols. The important thing to understand about meanings, signs, and symbols is that they're everywhere. We'll talk in part two about the difference in definitions between a symbol and a sign. But right now, what you need to know is that there are all sorts of messages being intentionally put everywhere around your field of vision so that you can see and understand what other people want you to think. That can mean an ad banner when you surf the internet. That can be a billboard where you drive. It can be the newspaper that lands on your neighbor's driveway. It can be something in a textbook in school. Everywhere around you, people have created symbols designed to persuade, inform, and entertain you in ways that you may not even be aware of. And unless you can look past the things that are designed to distract you from paying attention, you won't get the full meaning. Now, whether you're in one of my classes or not, if you're watching this and you have any questions along the way or you'd like more information, please feel free to email me at dpreston.learning@gmail.com. You know, I first started thinking about meaning, signs, and symbols when I was in high school, and I was reading a book called The Great Gatsby with a teacher of mine. Now, what I didn't realize at the time was that The Great Gatsby wasn't just the story as it was being told by the narrator. I mean, sure, guy falls in love with a girl seems to fall in love with a guy, maybe, we're not really sure. Guy does everything to try and make her love him. Buys a nice house, buys great cars, makes lots of money, has these amazing parties just to get her attention and be the kind of person that might deserve her affection. Well, to any guy in high school, okay, so what was supposed to be the deeper meaning? Why was my teacher saying that this was such a great book? Well, it was because of the deeper meanings that were in the symbols all around us. Like the green light at the end of Daisy's dock. My friends and I didn't agree that that was so valuable. In fact, we sat around thinking like, well, okay, so it's a dock. We see the water. We know that Gatsby's house is across the water. We know that he sees it. Other than knowing that's where Daisy lives, what's it supposed to be? Is it supposed to be the color of money? Is it like Shakespeare said, you know, that you should be green with envy? Or is it something different, like green light means go and that Gatsby should take a chance and like make a play for the love of his life? It turned out that the actual meaning was less important than the conversations we were having about the meaning. You know, different people can read a book, and because we all have different lived experiences, different feelings, different memories, we can take different things from the text and we can have a disagreement about it and actually see it in different ways and be right. You can also read a book at one point in your life and then come back to it later on after you've had different kinds of experiences and go, oh, wow. Which is some of what happened for me when I came back to teach. When I read as a student, I did enough to get the paper done. I did enough to get the grade. But I didn't really understand like what Hamlet is going through his to be or not to be moment. Like a lot of people, I just thought he was a moody teenager with a decision-making disorder. I didn't really appreciate the fact that Hamlet made up his mind to kill his uncle from the beginning of the book or the play. And yet, there's a lot that goes into those kinds of decisions that maybe we don't appreciate until we've had some experiences of our own. So back to the green light, back to Gatsby wanting Daisy to fall in love with him. That's a pretty basic instinct. That's a pretty basic impulse or drive that people have. And one of the things that came up was that when Charles Darwin wrote Origin of Species and gave us the idea of evolution, people became
aware of the fact that human beings actually have a lot in common with lots of animals. We are now called the thinking or the tool using animal by a lot of people. And after all, we're born, we eat, we sleep, we relieve ourselves, we mate, we die, we give birth, just like a lot of other animals. In fact, even our use of language isn't all that unique. So many other animals communicate through language. You can go outside and listen to the birds in the trees. We're not that special in that way. But it turns out there is one thing that human beings do that hardly any other animal does. This is a wonderful book called Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari. And in this book, we learn that, first of all, there were lots of different kinds of hominids. There were Neanderthals, there were Australopithecus, Homo erectus, Denisovans. But Homo sapiens did something different. We weren't the strongest. We didn't necessarily have the best location on the planet to use as a powerful lever. But we told stories. We invented ideas that didn't actually exist as a physical thing in the world that we could verify with our senses, but we knew those ideas to be true anyway. And those ideas allowed us to share meaning. Now, this becomes important because most species, even human beings, don't normally organize in numbers much greater than about 150. This is called the Dunbar number. The Dunbar number is important. Schools are arranged around it. Even high school teachers who teach 5-6 periods a day don't normally have much more than 150, 180 students, because after that number, it's really hard to tell who belongs in the group and how to communicate with them in a personal way. The military is also arranged around the Dunbar number. But when human beings started inventing these stories, we could organize in numbers far greater. Even language is limited. Language, even if it's English, even if it's in the United States, differs from place to place. You can hear the difference between a West Texas drawl and an East Texas twang. The Massachusetts people who don't pronounce their I's. Or you talk to a New Yorker who doesn't talk like an Italian. I mean, you've got all of these different accents and ways of being, and that's just in one language in one country. When you go to a different country and you don't speak the language, you're at a disadvantage. Hay muchas palabras en español que no me recuerdo porque no practico bastante. But I'm not really fluent in Spanish. I have to think about it in English and translate it into my mind. So when I have a student who's learning to read in English and trying to translate it into Spanish, I recognize that there are some extra steps. But back to symbols for a minute. Human beings did something that takes care of that whole problem. If you see an American flag, it doesn't matter which language you speak, you recognize that that's the national symbol for the United States of America. If you belong to a certain religion, Catholicism or Islam, for example, you can go anywhere in the world and you can see the rituals being done in whatever language the host practices. But you don't have to know the language to know the prayers or when to stand up or when to sit down or how to indicate that you believe the same things and that you are one of us, whoever the us is. The same is true if you're a Green Bay Packers fan or a Manchester United fan. You can go anywhere in the world with those team colors, and the people who know will know by the millions. Now that becomes important because once we share story, once we share the meaning of symbols, well, then we can organize in far greater numbers and everything becomes possible. Next time in part 2, we'll talk about the specific definition of a symbol and how to recognize symbols in the stories we tell so that we can get to the deeper meaning that lies beyond. Thanks for watching. See you next time.
All right. So as you think about these questions, they're all pretty much in order of the presentation. Does anybody have any questions at this point while it's fresh? Well, Dr. Preston, we're all so well informed because you were so clear and the production value was so high, it was like watching a talk show. I know, it was pretty good. Really? Are people that clear on things?
Oui, oui.
All right. We all the way home then. Let's go back to the agenda. So I'm asking that you answer those questions in a post on your blog with the title, It's Symbolic. That's what I'll know to look for. And I was thinking this morning, I'm also going to do this class a favor. I don't normally do this in a given year because I think it's important for students to create their own sense of what's being asked and follow along. But because of the fact that we're all online this year, I'm going to create a new page for the course blog that's called Work Product. And on that page, I'm going to keep a running list of anything that I ask you to post on your blog or write in your journal. So that way, if whatever happens, you get a little dizzy and you lose a couple days, or you're wondering, hey, what's supposed to be on my blog? You'll have a list and you'll have it all in one place so that you can refer back to it. Would that be helpful for you?
Yes.
Okay, you got it. So please do post the answers to those questions on your blog with that title. And then that brings us to the final agenda item for the day. A few years ago, I went and saw a musical with my family that I had seen before when I was a lot younger. In fact, when I was in high school, I was really fortunate to meet some actors and actresses. I grew up in Los Angeles, and they were in a play in Burbank, and they invited me to be a part of their theater class, their acting class. And I was really just curious about it. I never really wanted to be an actor myself, but who grows up in Los Angeles and isn't curious about Hollywood? So as I got to know them, one of them got a break, like the break of a lifetime. He was cast at the Pantages Theater in a role in Les Miserables. And if you've ever seen, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that I can see you bigger. If you've ever seen this image, it's one of the most popular theater productions of all time, big musical. And I realized, oh my gosh, all of the themes in this story, and they were there the whole time. Like when I was a kid, they were there, but I didn't really notice that when I was a student. You may identify with this, but I'm going to confess something. When I was a student, I understood most of what I read, and I did the work. I wasn't a bad student, but I also was really busy, and I had a lot of competing obligations. So when I read, it was basically like, tell me what I have to do to get the grade. Sound familiar? And when you read something like Hamlet, or when you read something like Les Mis, the other part of it is, when I was 15, 16, 17 years old, I had 15, 16, 17 years of experience, which I think you can relate can be a lot. We see and feel a lot by the time that we're teenagers that adults sometimes don't even really give us credit for. At the same time, I have to confess, if I read a character who was a parent, I couldn't really empathize with that character because I hadn't really been there or done that. Or if I read about a character who was mourning a loss and someone died, there were some things that I just hadn't experienced in my life. So when I read them, like I said, I kind of read to take the test and write the essay. So when I saw Les Mis when I was in high school, it was powerful. The music was awesome. The story was grand. It was like about revolution and power and equality and hope, faith. But it didn't really strike me the same way when I saw it as an adult. Because when I saw it as an adult, I saw it as a father of a daughter. I saw it as a person who had been through a whole lot more in my life. But like I said, all the themes were still there. And moreover, they were still present in our culture today in this society, which will become important in a second. I'll explain why. So I brought it up at a faculty meeting. I said, I wonder if my students would like to read this book. And the immediate reply from another teacher was like, our students can't handle that book. And I was like, that sounds like an insult. And when I was going to say when I was younger, I'm still like this. If somebody tells me that I can't do something, I'm going to freaking do it. So I started thinking about it and I brought it to my class. And I didn't assign it. I asked them a question. I said, well, let me ask you the same question. Has anyone ever heard of Sir Edmund Hillary? Does that name ring any bells?
No.
Okay. How about Mount Everest?
Yes.
Okay. So Sir Edmund Hillary was the first person ever to climb Mount Everest. And people thought he was insane because it wasn't for money. It wasn't for fame. It wasn't to be an influencer on YouTube. There was no social media. There was no nothing. He had nothing to gain from it and everything to lose, because every single year, people who try to climb Mount Everest get hurt and die. And so people asked him, he did it. He came back down and they said, basically, what's wrong with you, dude? Why would you take that kind of a risk? And his answer is so simple that it's elegant. He said, because it was there. And at first, when you hear that, it's like, dude, we have so many obligations in our lives and we have so many sources of pressure that it almost feels like irresponsible to be like so self-absorbed that I'm just going to do something because I feel like it. But at the end of the day, that's the best reason to do something. And so I came to my class and I brought them this book and I said, do you see this book? Now, do you see this book? And they all went, ugh. And I said, do you see this book? Now, the paperback version of this is like one of the school copies, is like 1,400 pages. So it would be cruel and unusual for me to say, so we'll read it by next week. We're actually going to dip in and out of this book all year long. This book is going to be like our touchstone. We're going to read other things. We're going to talk about other things. You're going to have opportunities to make all sorts of choices about where you want to go in your thinking. But we're going to read this book together throughout the year. And I'm going to go back to the course blog for a second and share the screen, because I want to show you where it lives. So here's the link to it. You can see that, but I'll just scroll up a little bit because it's right up here at the top. It's actually the first page I put on the course blog this year. I was looking forward to this. And I put up a couple of resources. The first one I'm going to make fun of because I can barely listen to this. It's the Audible version of the book. I'm actually going to do better than that. I'm going to create a podcast and I'm going to read the book along with you. And I'm also going to interrupt myself once in a while to talk about things that I see and think about while I read the book. I'd like to think that that's more interesting because it's personal to us, but also because if we were in class together and we were actually reading together, it's hard because we only meet online once a week. And sometimes reading by myself, I get a lot out of it because I can go at my own speed and I don't have to wait for people. And Fatima and Stephanie, I love your comments. Yes is my answer to both. So when I read online, it's going to be with that same flavor in common, and you'll be able to ask me questions and we'll be able to have discussions as a result. This link actually goes to the free printed version of the book. And as you can see, it wasn't written yesterday. It's a while. And the publication and the timeline is important. Now today, I'm only going to read the preface, and I'll do that live because I want to talk about it briefly. The date of the preface is important. But here's what Victor Hugo wrote. So long as there shall exist, by virtue of law and custom, decrees of damnation pronounced by society, artificially creating hells amid the civilization of earth, and adding the element of human fate to divine destiny, so long as the three great problems of the century, the degradation of man through pauperism, also known as poverty, the corruption of woman through hunger, the crippling of children through lack of light, and here, Hugo doesn't just mean the light you can see, he also means the light of hope, the light of promise of having a better life, are unsolved. So long as social asphyxia or suffocation is possible in any part of the world. In other words, and with a still wider significance, so long as ignorance and poverty exist on earth, books of the nature of Les Miserables cannot fail to be of use. Now, he wrote that in 1862, and he wrote from France. The book, in large part, is focused on the French Revolution. And the thing of it is, and I'm looking at the chat, and yes, popcorn reading, and we can set this up however we want because we get to make choices. So I will work with you on this, and I will also see what I can do about getting you copies of the book. Because seeing that level of enthusiasm, who wouldn't want to do that for their friends? So I will look into that. I want to come back to the preface, though, because what was going on in France around the time of the book being written was rich people at the top making decisions that hurt people at the bottom. That sounds familiar. It was people being discriminated against based on where they lived or how much money they had. Sounds familiar. People having to rise up and take their freedom because nobody was going to give it to them. Well, that sounds familiar. In fact, the French Revolution, for a lot of historians, is actually the basis, the model, the inspiration for the American Revolution. But let's think again about the time that Victor Hugo wrote this. What was going on in the 1860s in America? Does anyone know?
Was it the slaves being abolished around that time?
Yeah. And I'm going to slightly modify your words. So the abolitionist movements were designed to end slavery. And this was the end of a very, I don't know an adjective powerful enough to describe the evil that started the formal version of this country, because obviously the land and people existed before the colonists came. There were Native Americans here for a long time. But when the colonists came, and shortly thereafter, in 1619, when the first slave ship arrived, that period of this country's history is still a stain on everyone's awareness who lives here. And in the 1860s, it was just coming to a head where people were realizing, enough people anyway, were realizing not only is this evil, but if it exists, that means that I am allowing it to exist, and that's a problem. So now I have to make sure that it no longer exists. And you're right, that was the abolitionist movement. And that also led to the Civil War. So it's interesting to me that Hugo wrote this preface in the time when people were still in chains in this country. Actually worse off than the people he was writing about in France. And I fast forward to 2020, and I think about that last line of his preface. In other words, and with a still wider significance, so long as ignorance and poverty exist on earth, books of the nature of Les Miserables cannot fail to be of use. Well, in 2020, do we have the three great problems of the century? Do we have the degradation of man through poverty, men and women? Yes, we do. Do we have the corruption of women through hunger? In other words, do we have women earning less money than men and having to resort to things that they wouldn't otherwise, whether it's crappy jobs or even in some extreme cases, things like sex work, whether that's online or offline? Sadly, yes, we do. And do we have the crippling of children through lack of light? Do we have too many children in this country who don't have the kind of hope that we would wish for if we're going to tell them that an American can do anything in the world? Yeah, I think so. So this book is still useful. And this book is like our Everest. And we have to read it just because it's there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by putting up a reading schedule on the blog. And what I'll ask is if we have hard copies or if we have just the online version, whichever version we're reading on, I'll put up marks for us essentially to make sure that we're understanding what's going on. They're not all going to come with questions and quizzes and all that kind of stuff. And Maria, I love it. She's saying it's only $10 on Amazon. She's going to buy it. I should be a fundraiser. But you know what? If you have a choice, don't go to Amazon. Go to my favorite bookstore in the world. I'm going to promote this right now. Go to powells.com. And my reason is that this is a local owned bookstore in Portland, Oregon. That's been there for I don't know how long. And it's not giving Jeff Bezos more money. So I'll tell you what, I'll put this in the link, or I'll put this in the chat.
When you said local, I thought you meant like here in Santa Maria.
You know, there are a couple great local bookstores in Santa Maria, but I don't know if they're doing online ordering. Yeah, it's funny I said that. I mean, like local to somewhere as opposed to Amazon, which is local to Jeff Bezos's wallet. Ooh, Stephanie's got a discount for us. What? Ah, I was a sucker for that at first, dork. So, so can't believe everything you read online, right? So what I'd like to do is just offer that up as a preview of coming attractions, and then to say, because this is such a can-do, awesome group, it's 2:26 now. We have the rest of the time for questions and answers, or for you to get started on the work that you either need to catch up on. By the way, Azalia, great video on your blog. I forgot who else put up. Somebody put up something that said, if it's not Dr. Preston, please move on. Who put that post up? I can't remember right now.
It was Anira, I think.
That was funny. That was good. But thank you to everybody who posted their videos. And what I was reminding myself to say out loud was, if you haven't finished your essay, or if you haven't finished your video, please do. I do not believe in a metal door that slams down after the due date and says you can no longer do the work. The motto of this course is better late than never, which doesn't mean that I don't want things done on time. All of our lives are going to be way easier if we do. But especially this year, I do want to help you create the sort of portfolio that you can be proud of. And I don't want that to be missing things just because a day on the calendar passed. So even if you didn't post your essay yet, please read mine, please comment, please think about your own, and please write. And if you need my help, please ask. And the video, please get to that as well. One last thing. I also posted a post about different ways to post stuff that you write on paper. Taking a picture of it's one way. I'm imagining that a lot of your teachers on Canvas are doing this kind of thing, but the image isn't very good. I mean, you can read it, but that's not always the case, and the image resolution of pictures are not always easy. This is the exact same page. Look at the difference. And when you handwrite something, it's even clearer. It's awesome. So what I did, if you click the read more button here, is I put up a 10-step process. It's a free app. I put it on my phone. And I took that page, and I'm showing you exactly what I did, and I scanned it using that app, and then I uploaded it to a website that converted it into a code that I could put right on my blog. And it's all there for you step by step. It's super easy. So when I ask you to post a journal topic, or if you choose to write the essay on paper instead of typing it into a blog post, I want you to know that that's okay, and you have a way to make that super crystal clear on your blog so that even the blindest old teacher wearing these thick glasses can read it. All right, with that being said, it's free play. So go ahead and get to work. If you have any questions or need any help, let me know. I'm going to be listening even if I don't see you right away. And I'll stay on for at least the next little while and see how we're doing. But if you want to work independently, you're also welcome to leave the Zoom call and do your own thing.